Just when you thought there weren't any more Brock Purdy debates to be had, one more popped up on Twitter today. Is Brock Purdy clutch? We'll talk about it on today's Gold Standard podcast. What is good, everybody? Welcome to the original Gold Standard podcast. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera. He is Levin Black. Levin did not do a show with me last week because of a major storm and power outage at his house. I missed you.
Don't lie.
All right. I didn't really miss you that much, but I'm glad you have power.
Yeah, I have power after about 24 hours, which happened to be just long enough for us to not do a show. But in the 10 days, 11 days since we last talked, you seem to have gotten an infection around your face.
Yes, I'm trying to have facial hair for the first time in my life. It's an exhausting effort, but we're doing it. On today's show, we're going to talk about something that just popped up on Twitter. It's really all Warren Sharp's fault, but he tweeted it out, and it has sort of taken on a life of its own. And so I thought, let's talk about it on the show. You know, it's May 6th. We're in kind of a lull here. So let's dive into it, right? This is what we do. So Warren Sharp tweeted about quarterbacks that are trailing in the last 5 minutes of a game. And he tweeted out the best quarterbacks according to EPA. And Brock Purdy wasn't on the list. And the reason was because he didn't reach the minimum number of attempts. So I believe it was Jesse Naylor asked him, like, hey, what about Brock? Warren Sharp tweets out, Brock Purdy, when trailing in the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter or overtime, not very good. 4 interceptions, no touchdowns, 5 sacks taken. His EPA per play was 44 out of 62 qualifying quarterbacks. And so the debate raged since then. Is Brock Purdy clutch? And before we dive into it, Levin, I'll just ask for your first reaction. Is Brock Purdy clutch?
I think with some circumstances he is. I don't think he's rattled by the moment, put it that way.
What makes you say that?
I think it's just one, he's somebody that's always confident. 2, he's somebody that I'm getting like feedback. I can hear myself talking.
Oh, that's weird. I don't know why. Pop out and pop back in again. We'll see if we can.
It's my fault.
Yeah, it can't be on my end. Otherwise, it would be my fault. So that's the tweet from Warren Sharp. We'll try to get the technical issues with Levin straightened out. A couple of things I want to say here, and I'll have to restate them when he comes back in. But let's see if this works. All right, try to talk now, Levin.
All right, so I'm not hearing myself now. What I was saying is I don't think he's somebody rattled by the moment because he's somebody that has a confidence no matter what. He does not get rattled. He's kind of got I would say like the Joe Cool type of clutch part where it doesn't matter. Like whether it's the first play of the game or the last play of the game, he's not really different. Where he's not clutch, I think, is when he gets down by too much. He tries too hard. He tries to do too much, and he snowballs the deficit. But in a close game, I don't think you can really argue, considering on the biggest stage in the Super Bowl, he led 3 straight drives to take the lead in the fourth quarter.
That is true. As you pointed out, he never left the field in the fourth quarter or overtime without giving his team the lead. I do think it's really weird that Brock Purdy has never thrown a touchdown pass when trailing in the last 5 minutes of a game in his career. Like, he's played since 2022. That's just a weird stat. Now, there's reasons for that, right? Like, part of the time is they weren't trailing that much in 2023 in the last 5 minutes of games because they were kicking the tar out of everybody, which he should get credit for because obviously he was part of that. I do think that he sometimes can get caught up in the moment, right? Remember that Christmas game against the Ravens where he talked about on the first drive, he threw an interception because he kind of got caught up in the emotion. They had made a big play to Kittle and they were trying to, now that was the first quarter, not the fourth quarter. But he did say like he sort of got caught up in the emotions and he was trying to make a play. I agree with you in that I don't think he's like scared, right? Like, I don't think he's like, oh my God, I don't want to have to make a big throw in the fourth quarter. I don't know if I can do it. Like, I don't think that's him at all. I think he's like, I want the ball in the fourth quarter. I want to make that big throw. Now, does he do it? There's some debate there, but he doesn't shy away from that. I do agree with you.
No, I think this topic cannot be covered without addressing the elephant in the room. Show me a quarterback that was really good trailing in the fourth quarter in the final 5 minutes that had Kyle Shanahan calling plays, and you'll be showing me the first one. that you got to talk about it. Kyle has had how many quarterbacks? He's had multiple Pro Bowl quarterbacks. What, Schaub made a Pro Bowl while he was the offensive coordinator. Matt Ryan obviously won MVP. Garoppolo, I believe, made a Pro Bowl with him, and Purdy has made a Pro Bowl. So he's had 4 different Pro Bowl quarterbacks, and all of them with Kyle Shanahan were terrible late in the fourth quarter trailing. I think part of it, if not the biggest part, is Kyle Shanahan.
That's an interesting question, actually. I hadn't thought to think of it like that. And like, you're just like putting this in my brain, so I'm trying to like think of it and go through. I would have to like really sit and study that, like Kyle's play calling in those situations. Is it good? Is it bad? I'm not sure. But that is a really interesting point to bring up that I haven't seen anybody bring up. So I want to give you credit for that. I will say too, you can make clutch plays in the fourth quarter of games that aren't touchdowns, right? Clutch third down conversions, clutch throws. I'm thinking of, because like a lot of times what happens is Brock will lead the team down in the fourth quarter, and then Christian McCaffrey will run it in for a touchdown.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean Brock isn't clutch or didn't make clutch plays on the drive against the Packers, the go-ahead drive on the Packers. I think it was the go-ahead drive. It's a third down, and he makes a throw to Juwan Jennings for like 15 yards. It's over the middle of the field, just over the outstretched hand of the middle linebacker. Beautiful, amazing throw. Didn't get him a touchdown. Wasn't worth any points on the board, but certainly a clutch play on third down. So it's like, sometimes I think we only look at certain situations and say these are clutch, these aren't. I think actually it's a bigger pie that people sometimes give it, that want to acknowledge.
I think the touchdown part is a big reason why you get the reaction that you get posting those statistics. I think there's some of that is just they haven't quite finished, as you said. I think it's kind of skewing the results. If you put up those stats and he had, say, 3 touchdowns to 4 interceptions, you'd say, oh, that's not great, but he is number 1 overall in yards per attempt. So he is trailing, like that's not that bad. And it would be something probably never even gets posted. But because, like you said, there's been quite a few drives where he does lead them down, but then they punch it in with a run. It skews the statistic to the point that you think that it's terrible. But I think the yards per attempt is telling the truer story. He's not bad in those moments. He hasn't been, I'm not sitting here saying he's been great. Mm-hmm. He certainly could have been better. 4 interceptions in the few opportunities that he's had trailing in the fourth quarter is not that great. But it does show if you're number 1 in yards per attempt, it means you're moving the ball. And if you're moving the ball, then obviously you're succeeding in doing what you're needing to do. And it's also sometimes, a lot of times, I can think of 3 right off the top of my head. They haven't needed a touchdown. They've only needed a field goal. So then once they got in field goal range, they got conservative. And somebody like Jake Moody has missed multiple of those, but that means he doesn't get the touchdown, right? Because they don't even try for the touchdown. They get to the 30, they're like, okay, now we're going to be conservative and we're going to go for the field goal.
Because Kyle tries to run the clock down instead of staying aggressive.
Right.
Lads Rips says, run first offense, run first lineman. Kyle's history predates Brock. The system isn't built to come from behind. Give Brock a great pass blocking line and he would shred. I disagree. I don't know why people say that. Kyle's system isn't built to come from behind. His system is built to score as many points as possible. It's like, how is it not built to come from behind? It's built to score frequently. In fact, every time they get the ball. How is that not built to come from behind? I don't understand that.
Because to come from behind, you have to do it in a certain way. And that is, you can't run the ball because that runs the clock. And I think the run first lineman is the biggest part of it. That shows the true priority. Kyle doesn't care about pass blocking. He prioritizes getting somebody that's athletic and can do his zone blocking scheme. And what that means is when the defense knows they can tee off and really come after the quarterback, that offensive line does not hold up. We literally saw Brock get injured on a play like that. We saw somebody like Burford ad-libbing because you have linemen that don't belong there because they haven't prioritized that. So I do think that plays a pretty large factor, and it does mean that the offense is not built to come back. It is not an offense that is built for when the defense knows you are definitely passing, we're sending the house after you. How many times have we seen this offense fail to pick up blitzes when the opposing defense is able to get aggressive? That's what I think that means, and I do agree.
Well, when you say come from behind, you're saying multiple scores down. Because if you're down by 2
points. You're talking about late. The statistic that you posted is in the final 5 minutes trailing. Well, in the final 5 minutes trailing, a lot of times you're not going to be trying to run the ball. You're not necessarily running your normal offense. You are going to be running an offense that's a little bit different than your normal offense.
Well, I think if you're down a field goal and there's 5 minutes to go, you can absolutely run the ball. If you're down multiple scores, yeah, but I would argue no offense is really built to come back from multiple scores. Like that's not.
But a pass first offense is capable of doing that a little bit easier because they prioritize that part of the offense. They are prioritizing the part of the offense that needs to succeed when down big. It's no different than in other sports. When you have a basketball team that you live and die by the 3-pointer, that team can come back easier because if they get hot, boom, the lead's gone. So instead of a slow it down post offense, which doesn't really exist much in the NBA anymore, but in college it still does, but a team that is a half-court offense that wants to slow it down, play through the post, play through a center, they need more time to come back. That's no different than a running offense needs more time on the clock to be able to make a comeback than a pass offense that's capable of going and getting the big play.
But Kyle's offense almost always leads the league in explosive plays.
Yes, but that's predated on Kyle's offense is literally built around you don't know what he's going to do. When you are down late in the game, you do know what he's going to do. He's going to be passing. And I think Kyle loses his biggest, I guess, trump card. The thing that makes him so great is that he's unpredictable. You can't know based on the way he's lining up whether he's going to run or pass, and that makes the defense have to play you honest a lot more. That allows him to get these plays where somebody's wide open. When it's late and you're down, the defense is able to push back. They're able to blitz, but also fall back into coverage, and I think that thwarts the biggest advantage Kyle Shanahan has as a play caller.
Benali asks a good question. How many games has Purdy been down 1 touchdown with 5 minutes to go? What's the sample size we're looking at? I don't know specifically, Benali. I was trying to do some quick Googling before the show began. I will say this. When trailing in 2023, when Brock Purdy was trailing with less than 4 minutes to go, he had 17 pass attempts all season in 2023. In 2024, when trailing with less than 4 minutes to go, he had 32 pass attempts. So it's like more than, basically twice as much in 2024 than he did in 2023.
And what was the offense looking like in 2024? Oh, he didn't have an MVP caliber running back. Oh, he was missing his number one wide receiver, and his second wide receiver was fat and out of shape. and his third wide receiver was injured a lot. Juan Jennings got hurt a lot down the stretch.
I mean, I don't think there's every quarterback plays better with good people around them. The better the supporting cast is, the better your quarterback is going to play. I don't think that's exclusive to Brock Purdy. There was another tweet I wanted to bring up, and it's from Josh Dubow of the Associated Press. It's actually from January, because sometimes I think we look at Brock Purdy's numbers and we're like, oh, he's awful. But here's the thing. Other than Patrick Mahomes, most quarterbacks are not good when they are losing in the fourth quarter. So disregard the first part, because Patrick Mahomes is a freaking unicorn and he's amazing, and that's why he's so good. All quarterbacks since 2018 have combined for a passer rating of 71.1 when down by one score in the fourth quarter or overtime of a playoff game. All quarterbacks, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Justin Herbert, any quarterback you want to throw in there, right? Josh Allen, all of them since 2018 combined for a 71 passer rating in those situations. That's bad, right? My point is, it's hard. Most quarterbacks are not good in that situation. It's not just Brock Purdy. It's a lot of quarterbacks. Now, Patrick Mahomes is insane. He has 5 touchdowns and no interceptions in that situation because I hate him, and the Chiefs have scored on 12 of his 13 drives in that spot. But sometimes I think that we have this idea in our heads that other quarterbacks are amazing at it, and that's just not the case.
No, and one of the biggest factors in QB rating, because it's not that great of a formula, is yards per pass attempt. If you gave Brock Purdy like even just 2 touchdowns instead of 3, I bet his QB rating would be over that. So he would be above average by QB rating, even with the 4 interceptions, because his yards per pass attempt is so insane. 9.6 yards per pass attempt leads the league a large majority of years. And he's doing it in the fourth quarter when down.
Somebody asked a good question. Lee Ving says, how many interceptions did Brock Purdy have in those 32 pass attempts when trailing with less than 4 minutes to go in the fourth quarter? To answer your question, he had two interceptions on those 32 pass attempts. Now, I do agree. I do think that he can be better in those situations. There's definitely room to improve for sure. Where is the darn it? Now I can't find the comment that I wanted, but here it is. Daza says, didn't Brock have 3 game-ending interceptions last year? He definitely had multiple for sure. He can be better in those situations. There is no question about it. But I think it's a small sample size, and I think he's still a very young quarterback. I think that's one area where he needs to improve, but he can grow in those situations.
And he's proven it in the biggest stage, because it's not just the Super Bowl that he did it. I mean, he led the comeback against the Packers. That's why it's like we've seen. I think a lot of 49er fans would think he's clutched if you just ask them, because he's done it in the playoffs. Now, obviously, his regular season statistics. I mean, yes, it was surprising to me to see that he had 0 touchdowns in that situation, but I've seen him do it when it matters the most. So it's kind of a non-factor to me. He literally led three drives to take the lead in the Super Bowl, and he led a comeback against the Packers. It was one of the biggest comebacks that has happened in the playoffs. So I'm not concerned about it.
People are saying, well, in that Lions game, Brandon Ayuk had the catch. I know Rich Madrid was talking about that. But here's the thing with the Ayuk catch.
Everybody gets lucky completions.
Well, not only that, but that got them 0 points. That catch could have happened, and the comeback may not have. If Brock doesn't throw a touchdown to Ayuk 3 plays after that, the comeback doesn't happen. So if you say, I'll give you that play, and this comeback still might have happened, you can't credit the whole thing to the Ayuk helmet catch. And by the way, that was first down. Let's say that pass goes incomplete. The Niners still could have driven down the field and scored a touchdown anyway on that drive. So you got to give him credit for that. You have to. I don't know that we're parsing these things for every other quarterback. Julian Edelman made a crazy catch against the Atlanta Falcons in that Super Bowl when he led that comeback to win. No one is saying, well, that comeback he got lucky. Of course you got lucky. That's how comebacks happen.
Yeah, well, so that's if you want to get into what makes a quarterback clutch, I think that there's a lot of nuance to it, because part of it is, one, opportunity. Brock hasn't had very many opportunities. And when he has had opportunities, like I said, it's pretty obvious pass situations. But part of it is the offense and the personnel around you. Somebody that has Jamar Chase, for instance, is going to have a better opportunity to be great in this statistic. Now, obviously, a dominant quarterback can overcome that, because you just gave Patrick Mahomes statistics, and he's had very little to throw to the last few years. But I do think perhaps the biggest variable is just simply luck. a lot of quarterbacks are pressing when they're down because they don't have a choice. They're going to make tight window throws that they normally wouldn't make. And sometimes it's just luck if the DB gets their little finger on it or the wide receiver makes that diving catch. You know what I mean? Like, I think that is a big part of it. That kind of people's narrative, careers are made and broken by luck a lot of the time.
It has a part to do. It has a part to play. Of course, everybody has lucky plays. To me, what I think matters is what do you do afterwards, right? Joe Montana throws a pass against the Bengals in the Super Bowl to Billups on Cincinnati. He throws it right to him. He drops it, right? Should have been an interception, but he dropped it. But what does Montana do after that? He throws the game-winning touchdown pass to John Taylor. Like Tom Brady, tuck rule, right? It was the rule. It was a stupid rule. They immediately eliminated it after the fact, but it gave him another chance. What did he do? He got them down the field. They kicked the field goal. They win that game. Lucky plays happen one way or another. It's what do you do after those plays? Do you take advantage of the opportunity that you are given? Daza says, when has Brock had a big-time comeback without Christian McCaffrey? Why does that matter? I don't understand. When has Patrick Mahomes had a big-time comeback without Travis Kelce? When has Joe Burrow had it without Jamar Chase? Why are we parsing this with Brock Purdy? Why do his not count, but other guys we don't do that for? That's really, I don't think that's fair. Why are we doing that?
Yeah, I mean, almost all quarterbacks, Brady is kind of a one of one, has had that singular great player that they played with. You know, Peyton Manning had Marvin Harrison.
And Reggie Wayne.
Well, Reggie Wayne.
And James.
Yeah. But you have great quarterbacks tend to make Hall of Fame receivers with them. There's very few Hall of Fame quarterbacks that didn't play with a wide receiver that was considered one of the best during their time. Maybe not necessarily Hall of Fame, but one of the best during their time. Brock Purdy, does he have one of those? I don't know. I think it's way too early. Will Brock prove to fall apart? Certainly possible, because guess what? One of the things that we liked most about Jimmy Garoppolo early on was that he wasn't scared, and he went and he made those big throws against Jacksonville and things like that to where we thought he was going to be clutch. And then it turned out that he was terrible at any time that they were trailing. Whether it was the second quarter, third quarter, or fourth quarter, it didn't matter. Jimmy Garoppolo fell apart the moment the game plan fell apart.
Yeah, he was the absolute. Well, I don't want to talk about Jimmy Garoppolo. We have a super chat here from Daza who says, you didn't mention in the Josh Dubow fourth quarter overtime scenario, Brock is ranked 151st out of 160 quarterbacks since 2000. That wasn't in the tweet. That's why I didn't mention it. I was reading the tweet that was on the board. I know that Brock has not been good in those situations. Like, again, he can improve. But we also, like Levin has pointed out multiple times, we can't deny what we have seen. We saw him come back against the Packers. We saw him lead the biggest comeback or tied for the biggest comeback in the history of the NFC Championship game against the Lions. Like, those things did happen. So, and the Super Bowl, again, we've talked about all this stuff. Like, those things also happen. So two things can be true. Some of the time he's gotten it done. Some of the time he hasn't. Has he had more times when he's failed to come through than come through? Yeah, I think that's probably accurate. Last year specifically, there were some fourth quarter plays that he made me want to rip my freaking hair out, man. That game against the Rams, when he throws that interception late, I actually went back and watched it last week. Why? Because I'm a psycho. I was like furious. It was first down too, I believe, and he just YOLO'd that thing down the field and it was intercepted. He absolutely can get better in those areas, 1,000%. But it's not like he never does it. He has zero clutch plays whatsoever, because that's not true either.
No, and the whole clutch thing, it kind of drives me nuts because people will want to look at statistics in one scenario, but then a different player, they'll ignore the statistics because it's just you gotta look at it. And I'm going to give the biggest example in sports history of it. Sorry, it's not football, but Kobe Bryant, people talk about the Mamba mentality and all that, and that he was so great in the clutch. You know who makes a higher percentage of go-ahead shots in the final minute of a game in their career than Kobe Bryant? One, a lot of people. Kobe Bryant's like 30% on them. Two, LeBron James. LeBron James has a rep for being terrible in the clutch, and Kobe Bryant is considered probably the second best clutch ever after Michael Jordan. And yet, statistically, LeBron is better at it. So it's just narrative is a big thing. You do it in a big moment, or you have the look. And that's a big part of it, especially football. It's a little harder because they have the helmet on. But if the player is confident and has the look and they're not like deer in the headlight look, then people think they're clutch because they have the confidence. I think Brock has the confidence. He looks the part. The statistics don't back it up yet in the regular season. I would be interested to see if you added in the playoffs, what the statistics come up to overall.
That I don't know. That would be an interesting thing to look at. I just forgot what I was going to say. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Also, because this is a small sample size, I do wonder if this is sort of fluky. And what I mean by that is there high variance year to year? Because remember that year where Kirk Cousins had all those comebacks in the fourth quarter? Was that 2 years ago? It was like every single week, Kirk Cousins was driving them down the field and throwing touchdown passes to get them wins or give them the lead. And then the next year, he was terrible at it. And I don't know. I haven't studied it closely enough to be able to say. But is that like, do you just have a year where for whatever reason, it all clicks and everything's working and you're awesome at it, and then the next year you can't do it? I don't know. So maybe Brock comes out in 2025 and all of a sudden he's awesome in those situations. I don't know how much variance there is year to year because the sample size is so small.
A lot of variance. I would bet a lot of money because, like you said, sample size is so small. And it's also luck plays a very large part of it. Does the defense play like morons? And, I don't know, maybe in the final play of the second half, do an all out blitz and allow a wide receiver to get behind the defense, like that would skew the statistics. A single play where, like, say, a safety made a mistake in their coverage would skew the statistics massively because it would lead to, say, a 40-yard touchdown. Well, one 40-yard touchdown, when you're talking about 30 to 40 potential attempts, skews the statistic massively. So it's a lot. Like I said, it's a very nuanced thing. And I think it's something that you can't really judge for the most part until much later in their career. Some players, I think right away. Some players, you can see it. That guy fell apart. Mentally can't handle the moment. You know what I mean? And like I said, Brock is not that. Brock can handle the moment. Will he end up being clutch? Time will tell, because part of it is opportunity to do it on the big stage when people remember it. Because if you do clutch plays in just like a single regular season game, but then you do very unclutch interceptions in the playoffs, people will remember the playoffs much more than the regular season. So it's just a very nuanced thing that I think a lot of people go based on their feel and they don't look into it deep enough.
There was a tweet that Jesse Naylor, he sent it. He mentioned me in the tweet, but he was responding to something I had said, and it was all about Brock's struggles late in games last season. And I wish I could bring it up, because if I brought it up, I'd be able to respond to it more accurately. But I was talking about this with Michelle on our Bleacher Report show yesterday. I think that the defense is part of it, and it's part of our frustration with Brock in some of those cases, because I feel like, especially last year, let's just look at last year. A lot of the times what would happen is our defense would struggle, right? And the other team's offense would start to score points, and Brock would score, and the Niners would kind of be hanging around. And then it would get to a spot in the fourth quarter, like where the defense makes a stop. And we're like, oh my God, I can't believe they made a stop. Okay, Brock, this is it. The defense made their one stop, and they're probably not going to make another one. So you better score on this drive. And if he didn't, we were extra frustrated with him, because the defense would give up points later, and all of a sudden the game would then be out of reach. And we're sitting there saying, hey, Brock didn't get it done. And I think with other teams with better defenses, a lot of times they make more than one stop. They give their quarterback an opportunity to make that comeback. They give him multiple opportunities to make that comeback. Whereas Brock didn't have that last season because their margin for error was so slim. That doesn't totally excuse the plays that he made or didn't make, but I do think it's a factor that is easy to overlook.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the great quarterbacks, I would say the most consistent feeling or script that you see when watching their games is, God, the team had a chance to go up big and really take the game from them early, and they just weren't capitalizing. They were settling for field goals, and they let them hang around. You know, Brady had a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
Mahomes has had a ton of that. I mean, we've harped on it on this show
Mm-hmm.
multiple times that the other team had opportunity to, take control of the game and go up 17-0, but they settled for 2 field goals and it's 13-0. And all of a sudden in the fourth quarter, Mahomes turns it on and gets 2 touchdown drives, and now they're right there. That happens a lot. Well, the reason why it's not put away when the offense is doing nothing in the first half is because the defense was holding up just enough to keep them in the game. That's an advantage that a lot of the great quarterbacks has had. Not all of them. People like Peyton Manning didn't obviously have the defense to back him up a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But most great quarterbacks had something else. Brady had Belichick. The defense on the Chiefs, that is probably the most underrated part because everybody obviously goes Mahomes and Andy Reid, but Spagnuolo over there has had maybe the greatest stretch ever as an assistant coach on the defensive side of the ball.
Oh, yeah, absolutely cooking. And thank God Robert Saleh is back. I found the tweet from Jesse, and he went through in his mind what some of the plays were. He said, Rams week 3 has the lead. He turned down a touchdown to Ayuk that puts it away in favor of a long scramble and a short completion to Jennings. Like, I'm not disagreeing with that specific play, but damn, you're saying, well, you're counting that as a time that Brock had the ball in his hands and failed with the game on the line. And I'm like, first of all, they already had the lead in that situation. And second of all, like, dude, that is one play that was a completion. And like, I just feel like that is a very, very high standard to hold a quarterback to. The second thing on his list, Cardinals week 5 takes an extra hitch when targeting Kittle, gets hit and throws a pick. Ooh, okay, the pick is bad. That's one thing. But if we're down to the extra hitches that he's taking, I just feel like we are holding him to a very high standard, in part because a lot of the times the defense didn't do their part, and he's had to, like, this is your one shot. You're not getting any others, and he hasn't come through during that one shot.
Yeah, you can nitpick any quarterback. Mahomes was terrible last season statistically, and yet they were able to overcome it. You don't want to get into that because if you get into that, then what are you doing? You're having an argument. You're making an argument to make an argument. You're purposely going out and finding the specific examples you're looking for to make your argument for you and ignoring other things because you're nitpicking.
So I don't know. People are going to bring up these numbers when Brock gets paid. And by the way, there was a report today, report in quotes, things are moving in the right direction, which I don't even know what that means, but okay. But when he eventually does get paid, they're going to bring up this stuff. They're going to say he doesn't deserve this money. And it's going to be like LaShawn McCoy, or somebody's going to bring up Brock's fourth quarter numbers. And this is going to be something that gets discussed and brought up again and again and again until he gets an opportunity to change the narrative, quite frankly, until next season when he will get back on the field and maybe the 49ers will be trailing in the fourth quarter and he'll have to get it done then. But what's going to happen with Brock is there are always going to be people that think he's not good and carried by Shanahan and carried by the offense. And so no matter what good he does, it will all be due to them. And all the bad will be Brock's fault. It won't be anybody else's fault. And that's just the reality of the situation. It's the nature of the beast because he was the last pick in the draft. It's unfortunate, but that's how it's going to be. Fortunately for us, it doesn't really matter if he's convinced everybody. What matters is if he can win a Super Bowl.
That was a first. Page went unresponsive. That's what happened there. That's why I had to leave and come back in. I have not had that one before.
I'm just glad you didn't randomly end the stream like you did during the draft.
Well, I didn't X out the window completely. Granted, it was unresponsive, but I waited until I got a new window loaded. But yeah, this is the whole clutch thing. It's to be determined, and fair or not, I think a lot of it is luck. I also do think it builds on on itself. If you fail the first couple times, you start to crater. If you succeed the first couple times, you grow your confidence, you get more comfortable, you know what to expect, you get used to it, that type of thing, and it starts building and you get better and better at it. But I mean, I will always go back. I'll be, 50 years from now, almost 90, and be saying, I remember when that one old quarterback who's dead now, Peyton Manning, uh, was seen as the most biggest choker in NFL history for a great quarterback for like the first 15 years of his career.
Mm-hmm. Right. And there's plenty of time for that narrative to change. The whole Brock Purdy clutch. Like, what if he goes out this year and all of a sudden he's incredibly clutch? Then we say he's a clutch player. Like,
Yeah.
We'll have to see. He's still super young. Maybe he'll be better at it. He definitely has room to be better. There's no question about that. Like, it is clear. Like, he literally has 0 touchdowns and what is it? 4 interceptions. With trailing in the last 5 minutes of a game. There's room for improvement there, but there has also been some good, and we have to acknowledge that also. I think that's fair. I think, to quote our old friend Jim Harbaugh, we've plowed that ground.
I will say, granted, the end of their careers kind of changed both quarterbacks' narratives, but for a long time, I used the Manning brothers as the perfect example of, if I had to pick which quarterback I would rather have on my team, whether it was Peyton or Eli, up until the way their careers ended, I said Eli, because give me the quarterback that is only above average in the regular season that can turn it on and give you a chance to win a Super Bowl, over the quarterback that's MVP in the regular season and sucks in the playoffs. Because Peyton Manning, up until I think it was year 12 that he won his Super Bowl finally, he had a playoff QB rating in the 60s. That's all his games. And at that point, he had like 20 plus, almost 20 games in the playoffs. So it was a large sample size. Now he kind of changed that, but a lot of it was on him. Like, I remember having these, I grew up in Colts territory, so I would have this conversation a lot in our sports circles, but a lot of it was on Peyton. And I think he admitted it later on in his career that when he got in the playoffs, he just kind of didn't trust anybody else, and he tried to always do it himself.
He did struggle early on. His first 3 playoff appearances were not good. He's had some hideous playoff games. Against the Jets, he lost 41-0. He was 14 of 31 and no touchdowns, 2 picks. Now he also had some obviously much, much better playoff games as well. I remember, I'm old enough to remember when Magic Johnson was called Tragic Johnson because they said he couldn't get it done. Like, this narrative thing, it'll be a thing until it's not, right? Until you do it and win. Like, yeah, Brock was good in the Super Bowl in the fourth quarter and overtime, but he didn't win. So until you do it and win, it's going to be a thing. It's going to exist. By the way, you're absolutely crazy. You take Peyton Manning over Eli Manning.
Well, no, I'm talking about, this is like 2008, 2009. Eli's won multiple Super Bowls. He had phenomenal statistics in the playoffs. He was somebody that was making Pro Bowls at that point. Now, Eli, last 5-6 years of his career was absolute garbage, while Peyton Manning had maybe the greatest change in narrative of all time to end their career, because he completely shed that choke label that, like, literally, that I remember having arguments that Peyton Manning was the biggest choker of all time in the NFL, because he had won, I think before he won his Super Bowl, he had won 3 MVPs and yet was terrible in the playoffs. So that is an argument that I wouldn't make anymore. But I do think, like, maybe the best example of, you can pick your own narrative and it's about feel and it's up to the individual, is probably Brett Favre. Because Brett Favre, a lot of people would argue he was clutch. And a lot of people would say, look at how many dang interceptions he threw. And it's because he was a gunslinger. He was always going to throw the pass. And it was, sometimes it was intercepted and sometimes it was caught for a touchdown. Somebody was going to catch it. You just had a 50-50 shot of who it was, because he was going to throw it into a crowd no matter what. And that adds to that's luck, whether or not it's caught. When you're throwing a jump ball into a crowd, if it's caught, then you look like the hero. If it's intercepted, you look like the dunce. Brett Favre ended his career with a 6 interception playoff game. You know what I mean? So like you can argue and have a extremely solid and logical argument to support your choice that he was both clutch and a choker.
So we'll see what ends up happening with Brock. It'll be really interesting because the microscope will be on him with the new contract and all that comes with it. And look, we'll be along for the ride. Schedule comes out a week from tomorrow. I can't wait. May 14th, the schedule will be released. Everybody knows it's like my favorite day of the year. It's like Christmas, man. I love it. I can't wait for it to come out. Did you see that Warren Sharp just looked at all the schedules and he, using the projected win total from Vegas, has figured out the strongest and the weakest schedules, and the 49ers have the weakest schedule of anyone in the entire NFL, according to Warren Sharp.
Based on projected win-loss.
Right. So in other words, based
on doesn't factor in travel is what I'm getting into.
Right. Well, yeah, because we don't specifically know the, ins and outs of that. We will pretty soon here. But just looking at the projected win totals of the 49ers opponent, they have the easiest schedule by far in the entire league.
That's a damn shame, let me tell you.
Right, exactly. I'm not sad about it at all. Bring it on.
They got a legit shot at the playoffs. I think they have a heavyweight puncher's chance at being a contender. But they have a decent shot. One that if you said, I bet on the 49ers to make the playoffs, I wouldn't fault you. They got a very easy schedule, and there is still top end talent. Whether or not they have the depth is anybody's guess because 90% of whether or not they have enough depth depends on how these draft picks do.
The draft picks and the injuries. Yeah. And look, 49ers have had terrible luck with injuries almost every single year of Kyle Shanahan's coaching tenure. It's just a fact. So you can't say, well, it'll get better because it really hasn't gotten better. So I think you got to assume that the guys that are always hurt are going to continue to get hurt. I'm looking at you, Trent Williams. I'm looking at you, Christian McCaffrey. He'll probably be back for some of the season, but is he going to be playing all 16, 17 games? No, I don't think it's, that it's reasonable to expect that. I don't think it's reasonable to expect a lot of their older guys. Bosa will probably miss time. Fred Warner, well, Fred seems to be made of iron. So I don't know. He had a fractured ankle last season, didn't miss any time and made first team All-Pro. So he may be the exception. But yeah, that'll be the test. And if this 11-man draft class can even just be, if they can get league average play from a couple guys with a couple of really strong play from maybe the top end, Michael Williams and CJ West or Alfred Collins, that might just be enough depth to push them into the playoffs.
Yeah, I think of Michael Collins is good.
Michael
Williams is good. And either one of the defensive tackles that were taken a little earlier are average. They'll be okay. Now, obviously, if you can get average out of the linebacker too, maybe that defense jumps back to the lofty, top 5 defense that we're used to at the 49ers. But I don't think they need a whole lot, other than the one thing that I do think they absolutely need is Michael Williams has to be the guy. He has to at least be effective pass rushing. That's what he has to be a factor, I should say. I don't mean he has to go out and get 10 plus sacks. I mean, he has to be a factor where the quarterback can't scramble that direction. The quarterback can't escape to him, and he's there to clean up sacks when the quarterback does try to come his way. If he can do at least that, I think they will be much improved on defense. And then it's just, do they have an Achilles heel? If none of the linebackers step up, whether it's the rookie or the vets, they got a major, major problem to the point that they better make a trade. If none of the defensive tackles are able to do anything and they all have problems or they get injuries, they are screwed. So there's a little bit there, but I do like the chances of that defense jumping back into being at least a top 10 defense.
Benali says, sit the entire team against the Giants. No one needs to play at MetLife. Honestly, if you're Nick Bosa, do you want to go back to that stadium and play? I don't know, man. I'm saying if he's a little dinged up, maybe you just sit him for that game against the Giants. I wouldn't hate it.
I don't want to say people just because it's artificial turf. Now, if he has, my knee is tweaked or my hamstring's not good or my ankles hurt, something that's like lower body, okay, yeah, maybe you think about that. But to be fully honest, if you're a team and you're going, hey, if our star player has a little bit of a lower body issue, we're not going to play him on the turf, then why the heck are these teams not demanding every team get rid of it? You know
Well,
what I mean?
players
If
are.
it's I know players are. I'm saying the team. If a team is willing to bench a guy to protect him from that type of field, why the heck is it being tolerated?
Because the owners don't care. It's as simple as that. It's more expensive to have grass and to maintain the grass and water the grass and grow the grass and fix the grass. So they go with the turf because it's cheaper. That's the reality. And they don't care. And they don't care because the stadiums that are having World Cup games are putting grass in just for the World Cup. So
because it's required by FIFA.
And they want to make that money by having the World Cup game. So they're doing it. So yeah, like they don't care. That's the simple reason. It's very frustrating. It's very annoying. But this just in. Owners like to make money. And you don't get billions of dollars by unless you put money above all else, quite frankly.
No, I don't know that I would go that far, but for a large majority of billionaires, that's true.
I mean, how do you think that billionaires become billionaires?
Well, so some just lucked into creating a business that was crazy popular. It wasn't necessarily money above all else, but
well, agree to disagree. Anyway, one last thing before we go. Rookie minicamp is this weekend. I'm very excited. There's 11 rookies that we get to see. And I want to see Mike.
There's 11 rookies. I don't think we're going to see jack shit because it's rookie minicamp.
Why do you have to be such a downer? I want to know. I want to see how these guys look. I want to see what they do out on the field. I want to see the video, the Twitter clips that come out. Like, yeah, I need it, man. Inject it into my veins.
I will say what I've said in the past. I don't really care about the clips. They don't really mean anything. What I will care about is if nothing is said about some of the early draft picks, that's what I'll care about because that means, boy, they didn't look good. Now, if they're saying, oh, this player is great, they're going to say that about just about every single team is going to pump up their rookies. That's just because that's what fans want to read. So it's going to get the eyeballs. But if they're not saying anything or making mention of prominent rookies, that tells you they haven't done anything.
I want to see Kenny Almendarez, baby. Kenny the kicker. Let's go. The reigning Lou Groza Award winner. Let's see what he does in rookie minicamp. Put the pressure on Jake Moody early, baby.
Do you think we're going to get to know?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know.
It's possible. I don't know that we're going to get kicker coverage in rookie minicamp.
Well, I mean, honestly, like we know with the 49ers press corps, the coverage of what goes on is not always what actually occurs on the field, as we find out.
It's a double whammy. Not only do they not necessarily cover it honestly, but Kyle Shanahan also doesn't want to show you anything, even if it's like something totally unimportant. He wants to hide everything.
You didn't see it, but John Lynch just gave an interview with Chris Sims, and he said about a couple of times a year, literally he has to tell Kyle Shanahan, you can't say that to me. You can't talk to me like that. I'll break you in half. That was his quote.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Kyle definitely gives off the in certain aspects. I'm not saying he's a hard worker or anything like that, but he gives off a nepo baby persona sometimes.
Well, yeah, but just
somebody that has never quite been connected to the reality of what real life is. You know what I mean?
Jay and Steph were like, dude, John Lynch is not the guy you want to be mouthing off to. The Hall of Fame safety that was known for smashing people when he was out on the field, right? Like, maybe you need to calm down a little bit before you say what you're going to say.
Yeah, I would love to know, like, when do those conversations come? Like, what are they about? Because I can't imagine it's about, like, practice habits or game planning. It's got to be about, like, personnel decisions.
Yeah, that would be a really good follow-up to that. Like, what is one of the things that caused you to have that conversation? Honestly, I think If I had to guess, I would think it's because Lynch has to be the buffer between ownership and Kyle, right? So it's Lynch's job. And I've been in this situation when I worked at ESPN and when I worked at NBC, right? You get the word from on high, and then you have to deliver it to the people that you interact with every day. And sometimes that's an easy message because it's good news, right? Hey, we're going to get first class plane tickets when we go on the road for this business trip or whatever. Awesome. Hooray. Sometimes it's horrible news. And the people that you deliver it to are going to be like, what the bleep? That doesn't make any sense. And you have to just sell it. You have to just deliver the message, and it stinks. But people get mad at you. And I have a feeling that that was when maybe Kyle, went into the red a little bit. It's probably when Lynch was conveying some sentiments from ownership that perhaps he didn't like, but that's pure speculation on my part.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some things where I think Kyle sometimes lacks the ability. He does favoritism, put it that way. And I would bet that, Lynch is around the team. Lynch is, yes, he's front office, but I think he also kind of sometimes falls into a little bit of a coaching role. He comes in the locker room to give pep talks and things like that. Like, what GMs do that? That's a John Lynch kind of special there. So I wouldn't be surprised if some players maybe go to Lynch when they have issue with Kyle. Like, that's who they would go to. Like, if they're upset with Kyle, they think Kyle, like, I wouldn't be surprised if Kyle, like, goes off on somebody for one mistake and just, like, completely eliminates their ability to make up for it because he's so mad about one mistake. You know what I mean? Like, I could see Lynch could be the guy that the players then go to try to get Kyle to snap out of it.
Oh, I do think that there's a fair amount of Kyle destroys you, and then Lynch comes and puts his arm around you. Yeah. Hey, buddy, it's okay.
I know what it's like. Yeah.
Kind of builds you back up a little bit. Because I also think with Kyle, I got a lot of this from the Mike Silver book, but there's a lot of like Kyle will like mother, like he'll just go off on you, but then it'll be gone for him. Like like he says it in the moment and then it's over and then he's like back to normal. But obviously not everybody works like that, and they do need someone to put their arm around them. And I do think Lynch is that guy a lot of the time, for better or worse. I do think that's probably a good thing that Lynch does, because I think it helps make the environment there a little more tolerable.
Yeah. I mean, some players are motivated by somebody being mean to them, so to speak, at kind of the scenario that you were just talking about with Kyle Shanahan. Some players shut down when they get treated like that. Some players react well from you challenging them and telling them, pressure's on, and some shut down when you tell them pressure's on because they panic and they get stressed and they lose the mental kind of focus that they need.
Right. And it depends on which kind of player you have, quite frankly. And a lot of the times, like Tom, I brought this up the other day with somebody, I can't remember who it was, but like Tom Brady loved to be coached hard. He thrived off of it. He got motivation from it. Belichick loved to coach his quarterbacks hard. So it just so happened that their two personalities were perfect complements for one another. They fed into the success of one another. And it was one of the many reasons why they were so successful in New England. And I don't know, which one of those do you think Brock is?
I think there's a respect thing. If you're disrespectful to him, he gets pissed off. And it probably doesn't necessarily like ruin him, but it wouldn't do you any favors. But if you challenge him, that's like the way to really get him. Like, say, like if you want to be great, you got to do this. That will motivate him. That's the way you motivate Brock. You give him a challenge, because that's, I think, he doesn't lack confidence, so you don't need to build him up, but you got to give him some kind of thing to achieve to get him, because that's what's going to get him to go to the next level. But if you're just yelling and screaming and cussing him out, I think he's not big on being disrespectful. It's just my vibe. He seems like he's a very respectful type of person. He doesn't seem like a yeller and screamer himself. He does not strike me as the type of guy that cares to be yelled and screamed at.
Remember when Patrick Peterson, before they played the Steelers in week 1, was like, oh, their offense has tells. Brock Purdy's not that good. And then Brock threw 2 touchdowns on Patrick Peterson during the game. And afterwards, someone was like, yeah, you threw those on Patrick Peterson. He was like, oh, really? Was that Patrick Peterson?
Yeah.
Like, clearly knowing the entire time that it was. So, like, he does have a little of that, like, chip on his shoulder type of thing. And look, I'm looking forward to this season because he's going to have a lot of doubters. He's going to have a lot of people saying, you shouldn't have gotten paid. You got paid too much money. So he's going to have that motivation for sure. And if I was Kyle Shanahan, every quote that he could find from somebody, boom, put it up on the bulletin board. $50 million for Brock. The Niners overpaid. Boom. That Puka Nacua quote, right? Oh, if you pay Brock $50 million, their Super Bowl window is over. Bam. Put that up on the bulletin board. You're going to have plenty of that material out there when that deal comes through. And the Niners should use every single bit of it this season to help them in 2025 because they're going to need any extra motivation they can get.
Once he's signed, Kyle can do that.
Right.
And because currently the team is probably saying, well, you're not very good. You're not, we don't know for sure. And, they're jerks in negotiations.
Apparently not to him, it seems like. So we'll see ultimately. But now he says, play that Puka Nacua quote before every Rams game. Absolutely, they should do that. And I hope that they do. And maybe we'll get a little more of that this season, especially with Robert Saleh back in the building, because I do think Saleh would be quick to use that stuff. Remember he was Mr. We keep the receipts when he was with the Jets, when people were criticizing the Jets. Like I think he will maybe do a little more of that than Kyle Shanahan would have normally. And I think that's good.
It would also be good if you can get some more subscribers so that you can afford to buy a razor. I don't know if you've been paying attention to the comments, but there's been quite a few.
Only by 2 people, pretty much. Sorry, it's my face.
I've seen 4 different.
I can do whatever I want. It's my face. Sorry if you don't like it. MC doesn't seem to care. They say, another great show, guys. Thank you. Gold Standard is my go-to for all things 49ers. Never been disappointed. Appreciate that, MC. Thank you to everybody. We had almost 50,000 people watch our draft show in the first round, which is unbelievable. It's one of the biggest live streams we've ever done. So thank you for that. Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Tell a friend about the channel. I'm sure other 49er fans. Let them check us out. We really do appreciate it. Levin, I'll see you next week, barring another power outage.
Super important question, though, before we go.
Mm-hmm.
Is your wife okay with the facial hair? Because that's the most important vote.
She is not used to it because I've never had facial hair the whole time we've known each other, and we've known each other since we were 14, and I just turned 40. So it's a change. I need to get the the nice facial stuff to make it a little softer, I think. And
what's funny is I couldn't grow facial hair for the first 10 years I was in the oil field. And then I finally could, and I grew a beard, as you know, because for the first 3 years we did a show, I had a beard. My wife used to always complain that, it'd tickle her while, if I kissed her or something like that. I then shaved it, and now she keeps telling me, you should grow it back. You should grow it back. I kind of miss it.
Uh-huh.
Can't win.
Right, exactly, right? You always want what you don't have. But anyway, yeah, I'm glad it's a good topic of conversation. You can tell we don't have a lot going on when people are talking about.
It does make you look less like Woody. I'll give you that.
There you go. It's actually not me. It's an evil twin. The real Rob is tied up somewhere else in this basement.
Yeah, the evil twin always has the mustache goatee combo to differentiate.
Right, that's the clue. You think they would just shave and then their plan would have been foolproof. But anyway, all right. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, everybody, and we will talk to you next week.